Do you speak French? Not at all? So thank you, Viktoria Modesta, for being here with you. So you're presenting a whole new show, The Crazy Horse,
Yes.
which will start on June the 3rd.
Correct.
If for like 29 shows, I think.
29 shows, but only for 2 weeks.
It's going to be very speed.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a lot of shows. A lot of shows. I'm going to be a ninja athlete afterwards.
And there are a lot of articles about you that say that you reinvent femininity.
I think I struggle sometimes to feel like I'm speaking on a lot of people's behalf. It's really hard, you know, because, you know, we all have such individual journeys. And for me personally, I think, again, this kind of doubt and this feeling of like, oh, maybe these things shouldn't go together. That tends to be the thing that sparks the light bulb. And I'm like, no, I don't like this. You know, for me, it's the idea that you can't bring in all the traditional ideas of womanhood and femininity, from like glamorousness to, you know, the softness of the woman, and then you can't also be your entrepreneur, your boss babe. You know, I think it's this idea that for us to be strong and modern, we have to lose a lot of these qualities that previously defined women as less dominant. You know, and for me, that's like a thing that you know, I really tackle all the time because I don't like it. It makes me feel kind of fenced in. It makes me feel uncomfortable, like I can't just be myself. So I think that, you know, I hope that the new idea of femininity that's forming is that, you know, you can do whatever you want, and that should be it. There shouldn't be a formula.
Do you consider yourself as a bionic woman?
I definitely see myself as a bionic artist. You know, if you catch me on a regular day, I don't think twice about prosthetics. It's not like a thing that dominates my life. But, you know, I think that the idea of extending your body and your abilities with technology and with design is just so exciting because the possibilities are endless. So it's definitely like, for creatively as an artist, it's my playground. And, you know, as much as it was a little bit corny, when my prototype video came out and became viral, you know, it was exciting but sad at the same time that there was almost no content surrounding the next level of physical body that was around culture. You know, you have sci-fi films, you have the Paralympics, and there's nothing in between. And, you know, so the headlines were that I was the first bionic pop artist. And, you know, as corny as it was, and kind of sad in a way, you know, I feel like it's opened a lot of minds and opened a lot of doors for other people. It's also difficult to not let something that you do that was successful to define you.
What do you mean?
I think that when you look at the picture of the world and how people think about prosthetics, for example, you know, it's so varied. There's so many countries that are still so behind. You know, I grew up in USSR where it was, you know, it was thought that you were completely outcasted if you were a person with some kind of physical issue. And, you know, I think it's difficult. Prototype and the Channel 4 campaign became so famous. It's really hard not to just end up being the, you know, the artist with a prosthetic leg or the woman with a prosthetic leg, you know. And I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge that I face head on because, you know, culturally we've moved on so much when it comes to sexuality, to race, to see the person for who they are and to see them on a human level and to stop constantly putting
them
their
in boxes.
putting their label right up before you even find out who they are. You know, I have taken on as my life's passion to work on the idea of what is the future of the human body and our experience, you know, and it's a side effect that it's changing and tackling some of the things around disability, and that's awesome. But most importantly, it's like I'm really interested in what is after that. What does culturally, after we feel okay about seeing somebody in a wheelchair or with a prosthetic, how do we then relate to people culturally? You know, I'm interested in the bigger picture, and sometimes I have to take the firing line for that and keep reminding, you know, especially the press and people that, you know, times have changed, and it's really time for us to kind of move on and see what else is there besides the obvious sort of physical traits.
And how do you personally decide to like use your processes as a tool and to integrate it into your work?
You know, it's really important to kind of point out that, you know, I had a voluntary amputation because I had a really ill health, and it, you know, it really kind of needed to be done to just take control and just be able to do something different with it, you know. And so it's kind of natural for me. It started out very basic, that I wanted to feel balanced in my body. I wanted to be able to have more options. I wanted to be able to design my own prosthetic if I wanted to. And so it started out really, you know, on a low key and very personally driven. And I think it's really when I performed at the Paralympic closing ceremony in 2012, that was really a turning point, because something that felt really natural to me and just playful and just part of image and identity, you know, and fashion. I came out wearing a diamond prosthetic and this beautiful Snow Queen outfit, and I could see people's reaction and how it was, you know, it wasn't the fact that I was wearing a prosthetic that was different. It was my perspective and my attitude that felt like I felt like a complete alien. I felt completely alone in this stadium of 90,000 people, because I was like, wow, okay, you know, people are just haven't quite yet gone to the next step beyond seeing you know, the sports competition. You know, they haven't gone to the next level of this feeling like we're on the same level, and actually there's a different alternative way to look at this. And it was really inspiring. And honestly, I think that it kind of made me realize that there is a bigger purpose besides my own personal goals. It felt very... It's something that I already enjoyed, but it made it really meaningful. And, you know, I think once you start creating something that impacts people, it's kind of hard to stop, because, you know, we all kind of dream about maybe changing the world a little bit. So when you get a chance to change the world a little bit, you're like, wow, you know, I should keep doing this.
And before all that, I think you started in the fetish community in London, right? You were like 14 and you went to Torture Garden, the club.
Yeah, I did.
What was it? Does it still exist?
Yeah, it still exists. It's funny, you know, I kind of came from one extreme world, which was growing up in a hospital in USSR, being really secluded, not really developing in a normal social way, I then moved to London when I was 12, and I just I was let out into the world like a little wild animal. And so I think by age of 14, you know, I really gravitated towards the alternative scene. And I think, you know, as a teenager, it was the closest thing to sort of to Hollywood, what I saw, you know what I mean? A place where everyone is different, where you can find yourself, where you can experiment. I mean, Torture Garden in London had a really traumatic impact on me. I guess really that's where my love of pop culture really came from. You know, I think sometimes for a long time really, and even now, pop culture is a little bit of a dirty word, you know, dirty term. And, you know, I always like to remind myself and other people that, you know, it's ultimately a platform to communicate with a lot of people at the same time. And we have the opportunity to change it. We have the opportunity to influence it. And it's one of those things where I sometimes compare it to politics or the banking system. Is only certain type of people end up going into politics, for example. So you have this kind of industry where nothing really changes, and it's the same type of power-hungry people that keep going into it. I'm very interested in the sort of the sophisticated anarchy, you know, you know, to disrupt things in a positive way. I think that that's something that's really important, is, you know, is to break it up and have different type of people be interested in the spotlight, have different type of people enter pop industry to give it more cultural meaning, because it's really, consumerism and pop culture are the two main things that lead people's lives. And I think that if you care about having impact, that it's important to keep pushing more meaningful, more socially impactful things and ideas, you know? And so, you know, after Torture Garden, that's really that's where my passion was, is, you know, let's use this subculture energy and the confidence and kind of sprinkle that into the larger picture.
You seem to really believe into the fact of defining your own self.
Yes.
Like deciding your own life.
Yes, I really believe with it. I believe it so passionately. Because, you know, everybody out there is trapped in one way or another by some sort of set of beliefs that ultimately makes them very unhappy. And I think that, that's why I think art and entertainment is incredibly important, because it's an opportunity to just be like, hey, you know, what about this? Why don't you just shake it up, and, you know, maybe a different outlook is going to be better for you, you know? So it's, I guess that's kind of really where I just use it. You know, I use this particular tool to make myself happier, you know, and I'm hoping that it's a kind of a ripple effect, really, to just kind of embrace yourself, and also just architect your own life and things that you want.